Join me every Tuesday on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms as I bring in some heavy hitters to share the latest in nutrition and wellness science. We dive deep into food, sleep, stress, relationships, and so much more. Your weekly guide to a happier, healthier, more nutritious life. Are you the friend who's always being asked for health advice? Now imagine turning that passion into a fulfilling career with our Become a Nutrition Coach program. Step into a world where your enthusiasm for wellness becomes the heart of your own thriving business. With me as your professor and guide and coach on our user-friendly digital platform, you can learn from anywhere at your very own pace. It's perfect for your busy life. Envision empowering others to live their healthiest lives, all while growing a career you love. You're not just gaining a certification here, you're joining a community of like-minded professionals ready to support and celebrate with you every step of the way. So what are you waiting for? It's time to nourish your future and help change lives, including your own. Head over to nutritiouslife.com/BNC for a free class and a sneak peek of the program. Your journey to becoming a nutrition coach begins now. Hello, everyone. And today, especially hello to my midlife women and or career changers. I've got a special one for you. I'm Keri Glassman, and I just wrapped up a super fun chat with the amazing Dr. Sarah Milken. I was really excited to chat with Sarah for multiple reasons, but here are two. One, I feel like we're living parallel lives of midlife, wearing our weighted vests, experiencing all kinds of new things going on with our bodies, and at the same time going on college tours with our daughters while balancing work, et cetera, et cetera. Two, Sarah also has a great story about creating a new path for herself at the age of 45. And I know that so many of our listeners and so many people out there struggle with changing directions and or starting over. So I was really excited for her to share her story because I knew it would be super inspirational. We discussed all of this, and we also delved into the power of finding your own personalized wellness routine and the importance of finding what truly works for you. Sarah shared her midlife stew. It's awesome. And she has this every morning. You got to listen to find out what it is. And we also discussed how a good enough approach can make a big difference when it comes to midlife and specifically midlife wellness. So let's get into it now. And as always, please like, share, rate, and review if you love the podcast. Welcome to Living a Nutritious Life. I'm Keri Glassman, a celebrity registered dietitian nutritionist. Join me every Tuesday on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms as I bring in some heavy hitters to share the latest in nutrition and wellness science. We dive deep into food, sleep, stress, relationships, and so much more. Your weekly guide to a happier, healthier, more nutritious life. Welcome, Sarah. I am so excited to have this conversation. You know, I have been a big fan of yours, following you on social media, and I just love watching, hearing all of your midlife adventures, and I'm so excited to have a conversation with you today and share it with all of our listeners because I know they're going to love hearing from you as much as I love hearing from you. So welcome.
I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me. As I told you before we started recording, I did the fucking treadmill and I showered and I'm still sweating. I'm like, what's up?
By the way, when I do hot yoga, I shower and then I seriously think I still sweat for 2 hours.
I know. I'm like, what is happening here? I'm like blasting the air conditioner. I probably have frozen it and I'm using natural deodorant. I should use regular deodorant on these kinds of days.
I know.
But whatever. We're here. We're midlifing it.
By the way, you sometimes have to do that. I use the natural deodorant too, but I absolutely understand that every once in a while you're like, okay, there are certain days, not here. It's a podcast. It's okay.
No, you're wearing a dark shirt.
You're wearing a dark shirt. There are certain times, especially like a silk light colored shirt going to do like a speaking engagement. You have to just, you can't always go natural on those days. Okay. Yes. We're on the same page there. But you know what? Good. I always say, as many people say, like the dose makes the poison. So I always think if I have to do that, 4 times a year or so for those big, big, big moments where I'm wearing that certain thing. Like
My
that's a
teen
lot.
daughter really loves it when I steal hers because I can't ever find it because I don't use it that much. So
Yeah,
then I
I don't
like
either.
sneak in
Oh,
her
I don't own my
bathroom.
own. I just, yeah.
Yeah. And she's like, Mom, I can't use natural deodorant all the time. The school's like not air conditioned. I'm like, okay, don't worry. You don't use a lot of other things. It's fine. Everybody's going to be fine. Somehow I use toxic deodorant my whole life and I'm okay.
I know, but it is a big one though. I mean, that
It
is a big
is.
topic, and it's
I
funny.
know, but
I got my son to switch easier. I don't know why it was easier for him to make the switch
because
than
boys are just easier, Keri.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Well, yeah,
That's
it
just, I'm like,
depends.
Jake, do this. And he's like, okay,
Fine.
but like my daughter's like, do we have to do like a dissertation on it? Just listen.
Exactly. I know it's so true. I think for boys, sometimes it's like, okay, well, you went to the store and got it for me, so I don't have to do it. So sure, I'll use
Totally.
that.
I think after summer, we can all go back to like regular deodorant. It's the summertime, I think, and the beginning of the school year. We're in LA. We've been in a heat wave. It's like 500 degrees here. So you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. Okay, so wait, let's back it up. Now I love how we went right into the natural deodorant, midlife, sweating like an animal conversation,
Yes.
but let's go back a little bit. I want the people that don't know you. So I did a little intro of you, but for those people that don't know you, I want you to give a little bit of your background because I find your background really interesting. I know you got your PhD, and then I know you had an interesting career, and then you took some time and you were home with your kids, and then you sort of relaunched yourself at, I think it was age 45 from what I read. And I think that's really inspiring to a lot of people. So I'd love to just hear in more detail than I just gave, sort of like what your background is, what your career's been like how you got to doing what you're doing now, which is helping, educating, and inspiring so many women in midlife.
Oh, thank you. Well, basically, in a nutshell, I'm like the pretty nerd, like the quintessential pretty girl who loves school, right? I went to a very competitive high school.
I love school too, by the way. Were you the one that had, sorry, I have to introduce you.
Of course. I have like
color-coded like highlighters and like
totally.
color-coded
I still
notes?
do that.
Yeah.
You should see my Post-it notes all over my computer right now. I'm
Okay, love that.
It's amazing when it's not a live podcast and you have all this behind the scenes, like notes and scribbling. I have like the multicolor pen where you can do red,
I love
pink.
that.
Yeah. It's so good.
That real old school one that was just like red,
I have it.
black,
and I have
green,
the pink metallic one now. I have like 8 from Amazon. Anyway, and I use them for all these notes today. Anyway, I'm like the quintessential nerd. I love school. I love learning. I'm constantly researching. I went to public school until the 9th grade. Then I went to a really competitive high school, which I was not accustomed to. And like everyone there was like,
and where was
super
this? Sorry,
aggro.
just where was this?
Oh, what school or what city?
Well, what city?
In LA.
Okay.
So I went to a very competitive high school in LA. That's where I met my husband in 9th grade, like we talked about before we started recording.
Yep.
And like everyone that went to school there was going to these major Ivy League schools. My parents never did. Both my parents are professionals, went to graduate school. My mom has a PhD. My dad's a dentist, but they never went to like fancy schools. Anyway, so Take 2, I end up at Penn. I graduated from Penn. My husband went to Penn also. And
so you went from high school to college together.
Yes. Well, it's a long, boring story, but I got into Penn as a freshman. And at the last minute, I decided not to go because I had a little bit of a freak attack. So I went to UCLA, and then like 2 or 3 months into UCLA, after like pledging a sorority and doing the whole thing, I was like, I'm such an idiot. I really should have followed and gone out of town and done the real whole college thing. So I reapplied to Penn. If I got in, I was going to go. If I didn't get in, I was going to stay where I was. So I got into Penn, and then my husband, we weren't together at the time, found out I was coming. And then we were a couple before I started Penn sophomore year.
Okay.
So we've been together like 28 consecutive years since then. It's kind of a crazy story.
It is an amazing story.
So I grew up in a house with 2 working parents. My mom was a CEO, and I always felt like so much of who I am is because she's a career woman and because she had so much going on outside of her kids and her husband and all the things, that that was sort of all I knew. And my mom never drove carpool. She didn't work in the nurse's office. She never came to a PTA meeting. And she was a great mom. And everything I knew about her was her sort of working identity. So in my mind, like, that's what I was going to do. So I like went to an Ivy League school. I got my PhD in educational psychology. I was teaching in the Graduate School of Education at USC. I got pregnant with my son. I was married at the time, and I never, ever, ever imagined choosing to be a stay-at-home mom.
Did you know that there is one phase of sleep that most people fail to get enough of? And this one phase of sleep is responsible for most of your body's daily rejuvenation, repair, energy, and controlling hunger, and even the hormones that affect our weight, and so much more. I'm talking about the deep sleep phase. And you probably know by now that sleep deep is a pillar of a nutritious life. So there you have it. It's for good reason. You probably also know that I'm a little sleep obsessed, not with sleeping a lot per se, rather with getting good quality sleep. Because I've been a not so great sleeper most of my life. And when I sleep well, I feel like I can conquer the world. And when I don't, well, not so much. So why don't most people get enough of this one most important phase of sleep? A big reason is magnesium deficiency. Over 80% of the population is deficient in magnesium, and magnesium increases GABA, a neurotransmitter which encourages relaxation on a cellular level, which is critical for sleep. Magnesium also plays a key role in regulating your body's stress response system. Those with magnesium deficiency usually have higher stress levels, which negatively impact sleep as well. Now, before you go out and buy a magnesium supplement, it's important to understand that most products out there only have 1 to 2 forms of magnesium, when the reality is your body needs all 7 forms of this essential sleep mineral. That's why I recommend Magnesium Breakthrough. I used to just take magnesium at night, but now I take it at night for relaxation and sleep, and in the morning for brain function and stress management. Magnesium Breakthrough contains all 7 forms of magnesium designed to help calm your mind and help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up refreshed. The deep sleep benefits are really noticeable. I track my sleep. You may see me post this on Instagram, and I can tell you I see and feel the difference. For an exclusive offer, go to buyoptimizers.com/NL Keri and use promo code NL Keri for 10% off any order. I'll also put that in the show notes.
And I never, ever, ever imagined choosing to be a stay-at-home mom, ever. And I never even thought about it when I was pregnant. And then when I had my first kid, I thought, oh my God, like, I don't want to leave. And looking back on it, I'm not going to say it's ancestral trauma because I had a great childhood. But I don't know, maybe I was like going back in time and being the mom, the other kind of mom that you can be at the same time, where you're driving carpool and you're working in the PTA, you know, doing all of those things. And I guess at the time, I just didn't feel like I could do it all well at the same time. My mom was able to do that, but I didn't know if I could. And I'm kind of a perfectionist. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to really savor this. I never thought I would be a stay-at-home mom. I think I started this podcast when my son was 16. He's now 20. And then one day at 45, I was like, I have such a bad case of the midlife fucking itchies. Like, I've got to scratch this itch. I have to find something outside of my husband and my kids and all of that. It's amazing, but it's very insular and very kind of lonely at times. And as we all know, it's like fucking Groundhog Day. It's the same day over and over and over again. And I have an amazing family, but at the same time, I was also craving something of my own that had nothing to do with them.
Right.
And so at 45, I hired a life coach. I was like, what's a life coach? And then we went right into COVID 2 weeks later.
So I have a question. Was there a moment that you woke up and said, or was there a moment, you know, where a light bulb went off and you said, okay, I need something more. I need to do something for myself?
I think I was
Or was
itchy
it
for the whole,
building?
it was building. I think I was itchy for the whole 16 years,
Okay.
but not unhappy, but just there were
Right.
times where I was like, okay, I can't go to one more board meeting. I can't be one more trustee. I can't serve
Right.
on one, whatever. And because I wasn't just doing the mom thing. I was also doing a lot of like philanthropic work too, but none of it felt like it was necessarily mine.
Yeah.
And I feel like, although I'm not like a painter or a sculptor or an artist, that I'm a pretty creative person,
Right.
but like creative intellectually.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't feel like I had that creative kind of spirit thing going. And I didn't have hobbies like, oh, I could take a pottery class on Wednesdays. I didn't have that either. So I really sort of felt like this hole.
Well, it sounds like you weren't using a muscle that you had. Like you have like this muscle and you weren't using it and you're like, this is
Yes.
atrophying and I need
But I
to,
couldn't
and I
pinpoint
need to use
exactly
that.
what I needed or
Yeah.
I wanted. I was just craving novelty
Mm-hmm.
and ownership.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I want to go back to one thing you said when you were talking about your mom, like you always imagined working, your mom worked, and then you had your son and you're like, oh, wait, maybe I don't want to do that. And maybe, like you said, maybe it was something from like the way you were raised that you're like, wait, no, I don't want to do that. I always think about that because my mom stayed home. She was home. I always say, I literally remember the one day I came home from school. I don't even remember if it was middle school or high school, but I remember the one day that I came home to no one being home. And it was like a big deal. No one's going to be home. You're going to this. Don't worry. There's food on the table. Like the whole, like one day.
Like suddenly
crazy.
you're like a latchkey kid or something.
Yeah, but it was
That's
literally,
the worst
it was
term
one
ever.
day.
That's
And I
so
remember
funny.
it because it was one day because my mom was home every single day, every morning when I left for school. I mean, every single thing. And it was amazing and great. And she's the most incredible mother. But it's funny. I mean, she'll say now, like, there are so many things like that. She's like, I should have done this and I should have done more and I should have done, like, I know she loves that she loves her family. But
we all want what we didn't have.
Correct.
The grass is always greener.
So that's what I always think about with, like, to me, it was like, I'm going to work. I'm going to do it all. I'm going to work and I'm going to have family. I'm going to work. I'm going to do it all and and all this. And that was to me the direction I wanted to go. But I sometimes think about it because my daughter, I mean, I know, and I'm not going to speak for her, but I know she has big goals and dreams and aspirations, but I always wonder sometimes when she is a kid, is she going to look back and be like, I do not want to be running around like my mom running around. No, she will say that I was there for everything. I know she appreciates, like I do think, she'll give me credit, but I wonder if she's going to have that same sort of like reaction, like what you just said, because again, you do sometimes like, you know what, I guess what I'm saying, there's no perfect way to do anything.
There's no perfect way.
We're all just doing the best we can and following
100%.
our heart and what we think is right and doing the best we can, wanting to be fulfilled with our family, doing the best we can and wanting to be fulfilled professionally. And it's just hard. I guess that's really what comes out. It's hard. Right? It's hard to do it.
One of the main mantras of my whole platform has become hard and good. Everything in midlife right now is hard and good. It's like working out is hard. It's also good. Having kids is hard, but it's also good. Having a spouse is hard and it's also good. Yeah. And so it's like, if you think about it, we are in this mode of trying to kind of not force ourselves, but remind ourselves to lean in and to remember that it's hard and good for all of us. Yeah. It's not like everyone has this magical life that's on social media where they wake up in the morning, the birds are chirping and everything's perfect and they've magically lifted the dumb weights and they've walked 15,000 steps and they've eaten the fucking sauerkraut for their gut microbiomes and all the things. It's like, shut the fuck up. There's so much. Totally. There's so much out there. And I think part of the kind of momentum behind my platform and my podcast is the relatability factor. Like, hey, you guys.
Well, I think that's what connected me to you. I think because so many of those things, like the weighted vest, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm putting on that weighted vest too. I'm with you, girl. So many things. It's relatable. We're all going through all these things. But I think, like you said, midlife, it's hard and good. I think it's all hard and good, right?
It
like
is.
Even with the young kids, it's
but all. I think in midlife you have more time to think about the hard and good aspects of it. And you're also kind of psychologically unhinged if you haven't had your hormones
correct.
monitored or saved. And so I think having the kind of like psychological disharmony along with all of these things happening, empty nest, you know, the drop in the hormones, all of the things, it's kind of like this midlife stew of holy shit, everything feels a little undone right now.
I also think that a lot of people, I brought this up the other day, I was talking and I actually posted something about this, about, you know, being really tired during this stage of life. And I always joke that when my boyfriend says to me, like, why are you tired? You said you slept well last night. I'm like, I am tired from the last 20 years.
No, it is.
Do you not know that Rex, my son, is 21 years old? 21 years, like since he's been born. Like, and it's not him. It's just being a mom and working and doing life for the past one. I'm tired from the past 2 decades of life.
I hear you.
I think that's also like there's that build up to this, right?
And now that, like I said, like now that like I have one kid out of the house, I feel like I have more time sometimes to think about those things. Whereas before it was like, you're jumping in the car, you're driving to soccer practice, you're driving to a tutor, you're just going and you don't even know where you are.
Yeah.
But I think at this point, like sometimes you do have those extra chunks of time and you're like, oh shit, what do I do with this time?
Well, and I also think we're just starting to think like, we're getting older. How do we want to spend our life? How do we want to spend our days? Oh, I'm feeling a little, I get tired easier, or I feel a little this, or my cholesterol is higher. Oops, wait, I'm getting older. I have to think about those things. So I think you're also like looking ahead, like, how do I want to live life? Like, so I've just kind of been going for all these years. What do I want to do next? How do I want to prepare myself? How do I want to feel?
Yeah, I think I think the second half of life, it sort of feels like the more intentional part of life.
Yes. Yes.
Right. So before it was like, have kids, do this, check all these performative boxes. But I think by the time you get to this age, it becomes it becomes less performance and sort of more curvilinear, where there isn't like a checkpoint, like, oh, you got a degree, your kid graduated from high school. Oh, you checked this box.
I totally agree.
You have to figure out what your new check marks are. Is it your biomarkers? Is it your cholesterol level? Whatever it is, it just feels really different right now. And I think that for so long, we were so used to checking all of these boxes that are sort of like the societal boxes.
Yeah.
And when those boxes disappear, those sort of provide kind of like
they provide structure,
superimposed structure.
They do. Yeah.
And then when your kids start leaving, if you have kids or things just start changing for you in midlife, that structure starts to disappear. And you're like, wait, am I relevant anymore? Where do I fit in? Does anyone fucking care like that I'm here right now in this house?
No, you're absolutely right. I think it's such a good point. It's like for so long. I mean, think about like you go to kindergarten, first grade, or then you go to college. If you go to college and then you do this and then you're absolutely right. And then now it's kind of like, okay, that was hard, even if it was good and hard. But now all these things are changing. And I can also be intentional about how I want to live, right, going forward. So yeah, just a lot going on. Wait, so now I want to go back again to when you said you were 45, you met with a life coach. You're like, I want more. I need something else. My family's amazing. This has been great, but I need more. So what happened in that conversation? And the reason I'm asking you this, well, I think it's interesting and inspiring. And the other reason is we have a lot of, so as you know, I certify people to be nutrition and wellness coaches. And a lot of those people have already been in the wellness and health world and are up leveling their careers. But a lot of the people are career changers, and they've maybe been, in another career, but they're really passionate about nutrition and wellness, but they're scared to take that leap because changing careers or starting something new at midlife feels scary. And so I think there's probably many other types of people that fit into that box of it being scary, but they want something more. They want to do something different. They want to get out there. So that's why I want to hear about that experience because, again, it's inspiring.
I think, look, a life coach isn't going to say, Sarah, Keri, you should be this. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
A life coach is more like, let's think about what your goal is, what your intentions are, how you want to
Yeah.
feel at the end of the day at this point in your life, 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now, and what are the small steps you're going to take to get there. Sounds so basic, but it's like, what are your passions? What are you good at? What do you thrive on? And for me, it was being a nerd and reading and gathering information. Like, I don't read fiction books. I only read nonfiction because I'm like an information whore. I'm like, how is this going to help me today? Rather than, a love story, which would probably be better for my cortisol levels, to be honest, than to be reading like self-help books. Yeah. So basically we like came to the conclusion, okay, likes to ask questions, likes to read, likes to talk to people. And I was like, I love podcasts. Oh, wait, I'm going to start a podcast. And I didn't know how to start a podcast. She didn't know how to start a podcast. And then COVID hit like 2 weeks later. So I thought to myself, okay, I'll start a podcast. But as you know, it's not as easy as that. But it was sort of just kind of biting into something that was a possibility.
Yeah.
I didn't tell anyone about it other than my husband, because for me, I felt like, I know there's two schools of thought. There's the school of thought of tell people about it so there's accountability. Then there's the other school of thought is like, don't tell anyone about it because you don't want people asking you questions, poking holes and bringing the negative. Just kind of go with it for yourself. So I sort of took the school of thought of, I'm going to keep it to myself. I'm going to talk to my husband about it, my life coach about it, and then just launch it when I can. And I just started Googling, like, how do you start a podcast? How do you make a trailer? And I had the benefit of having a very technological husband who was home in COVID. Not that he didn't have anything to do, but help me with the podcast, but it was very helpful to have that resource. Not that he'd ever done a podcast before, but I'm like, Jeremy, I have
but even
to
just someone to like lean on to add, to like throw things off of. Yeah, that's helpful.
Totally.
Obviously.
So then like come into like September of 2020 or maybe October, I like texted all my friends and I go, you guys, I have a podcast and an Instagram. And they were like, social media virgin as a podcast and an Instagram. I hadn't even been on Facebook before. I was 45 years old.
So
I didn't even know
that's
that.
Another thing I wanted to ask you about, because again, I work with so many people. I mean, there's all kinds of people in our program, in our community, but there's a large portion of them are in this midlife, have had other careers and, or have had a career in wellness, but again, our age and, we're similar ages and didn't, I always say, like, grow up on social media, and getting onto social, especially in a new career, is very intimidating to a lot of people. And so
oh my gosh,
that's what I wanted to ask you about. Like, you put yourself out there. Not only did you start a social media for your podcast or, for yourself, like, but you do a really great job with it. And but you put yourself out there. And I think for a lot of people, again, that haven't been out there doing it, it's very intimidating. I think, again, these like younger people, like they're used to just doing it, whether they've done it or not, like it's the norm for them. It's not the norm for a lot of people. And especially, again, people that when they're changing careers midlife, it can be very intimidating. So how did you do that?
I just started it.
But do you think you just had that in you? You were like, I'm just going to do it.
No, I had never even been on Instagram before. It wasn't like, I was like surfing my husband's Instagram. Like, he didn't have it either. And I wasn't looking through my kids' phones. I think I just sort of got to this point in my life where I'm like, anything I do right now that's new is going to feel scary. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of one of the other kind of mantras through this whole platform that I've discovered along the way for myself and through all these other experts is be scared and do it anyway.
100%. I am.
And it sounds so basic. I know it does. It's not like it's fucking profound, Tony Robbins. Like, I'm going to change your life with that. But it's just fact. It's like, you are going to be scared, so you can do it or not do it. But rumination station is never getting you anywhere. And there's also a whole thing about kind of like learning on the go. Like, are you willing to learn on the go? Because there's no way you're going to know how to make a podcast, record the podcast, create an Instagram, create enough content to go through the stories, the posts, all that stuff, like you're never going to be ready ever.
Right. I always say you have to do something like a little bit before you're totally ready. Just a little bit before. That doesn't mean you don't prepare. You prepare, you get ducks in a row, but you don't wait till everything is perfect and lined up, because that will never happen. You have to always start. I always think like when you're almost ready. And that's okay. And I say, and another thing we say at Nutritious Life a lot, we always say, like, let's build the plane. Build the plane while you're flying it. You got to build the plane while you're flying it. No,
it's true. And it feels scary. Like when you're a performance-driven, control freak, type A person that is used to doing box checking, it's very hard to put yourself in a vulnerable position, especially when you have like your inner bitch, mean girl going and chattering. Who am I to do this? Everyone's going to see me as a weirdo. What are the carpool moms going to say? And then there's like that whole like external peanut gallery of like you thinking like, well, what's she going to say? What's she going to say? You'll never get anywhere. So let people think what they want to think. You do you, let everyone else do them. If you want Botox, great, you get the Botox. If you don't want Botox, don't get it. But like, let's not judge each other. We already did middle school. We already did high school. Midlife is a time where we get to sit where the fuck we want. And if we don't like the table, we can create our own new table. We don't have to sit at someone else's shitty table.
Amen. Amen. We do not have to sit there.
Yeah. No, and if you don't want to wear the black Lululemon leggings that everyone else is wearing and you want to wear the leopard, wear the fucking leopard.
Yeah. That's it. It's so funny. It's like, sometimes I go out to, go get a coffee or run to the grocery store and I'm wearing, I'm probably like my pajamas and Uggs and whatever. I don't care. What I care about is getting that errand done when at the time I need to get it done so I can have food, let's say in the house for my family, if that's the errand I need to do. And my daughter will look at me like, you're not going out like that. You're not going out like that.
Totally.
And I'm thinking to myself, who am I going to see? And then of course it's New York City.
You see everyone.
10 people, but I'm like, and I was like, yeah, I saw so-and-so and so-and-so. And she's like, do you see what you look like? I'm like, I don't care. I got this errand done and that's what matters. Like, 100%. And I was like, it's just funny. Like, it's just, and by the way, that's okay. If you do care about that, that's also okay. I just generally don't care.
But it's like the freedom is in the ability to choose whether you fucking care or you don't fucking care.
Absolutely.
And that's it.
No, I totally agree. So, okay. So you started this amazing podcast talking about midlife, sharing all of this information that you're reading and learning about, bringing on great guests. So I want to ask you, with all of this, all of this education that you've done for yourself and talking to different people on your podcast, what do you think for you? And then just in general, what do you think is the hardest part of midlife? Like, what do you think, I guess, physically and emotionally, what do you think is the hardest?
I mean, I think there's a lot of hards, but I also think there's a lot of goods too. And I think that the midlife itchies are real. I think based on research, every 5 to 7 years, we all crave novelty, whatever that novelty is. Like some people are sleeping with their tennis coaches. I don't play tennis, so I don't have that problem. Some people are buying Porsches. Some people are having facelifts, whatever it is. And I think that everyone's version of kind of filling the novelty gap or void is different. And like some women are going to play pickleball and that's going to be amazing and going to create community. And some women are going to play mahjong and some women are going to start businesses and some women are going to start cooking and some women are going to start blogs. And it's like whatever that thing is for you. But just keep in mind that that's not going to be the same thing for every single person. And let's not judge what everyone else's things are. Because some people are not going to start businesses. Some people are not going to start podcasts. And like, I kind of like this term of like self-expander. Because what if you don't create a thing, but your new thing is just being you? And figuring out what lights you up in the day. Perhaps you can afford to not work and you can take a hot yoga class and then go to the market and then, I don't know, go on a 17,000 step walk with your best friend and then visit your mom and then do a meditation class. Great. If that's what makes you happy.
That sounds like a great day.
No, but do you know what
that
I'm
sounds like
saying?
a great day. Like I'd love that day and then like have about 8 hours of work on top of it. But like
Right.
the day sounds great.
Right. But like everyone has a different version of that. But for some people, like that would be really boring. And some people would want that like 8-hour workday to feel fulfilled. And I think we all feel fulfilled by different things. Like
Yeah.
for me, I fucking hate cooking. It's my Achilles heel. I don't do it. I hate it. I dread it. It's the one thing I probably need to like fix
Why?
in some
But why?
capacity because it's like,
You've gone this far. You've raised your children.
It's a basic skill set. You know
Yeah,
what
but
I'm
you've raised it.
saying?
You've got, I mean,
Yeah, but
I
I
would have
still have
said,
a husband.
I know, but I would have said like years ago, okay, maybe
Yeah.
you want to learn it. Maybe that'll be good for your family. But like you've gotten through, you've raised good, healthy kids.
I know.
You're okay. Maybe
My
it
daughter
isn't
gives
something.
me shit for it though.
Yeah,
Let me
but
tell you.
like, I don't know.
But she's a great cook. So she kind of like fills in for it. But I just think we pick and choose what makes us happy. So for me, like cooking does not make me happy, but I have friends who that brings them so much joy. They go to the farmer's market, they get all these fresh ingredients, they make these amazing meals, they find it meditative, they find it, you know, so meaningful. But I don't.
Well, and
whereas they would never want to start a podcast and,
I think
film their husbands on Instagram.
Right. But that's what's key. What you're saying is you really do have to just tap into what's fulfilling and be more intentional about it. Whereas again, not that we shouldn't be intentional about what's fulfilling throughout all stages of our life. It's just much easier to be on that sort of treadmill, like you said, checking the boxes, going through taking the different steps that we need to. At this stage of life, we have, like you said, that time to be a little more intentional about what is truly fulfilling to us. And I think, like you said, like that's really what it comes down to is like, it doesn't really matter. Don't judge others, but take the time for yourself to know what is going to be fulfilling for you.
And I also think that part of our society and the kind of rules and regulations per se, it's sort of like, when you go to a dinner party and someone's like, what do you do for a living? And you're like, shut the fuck up. Like, that's like the worst question ever, especially for a woman.
Totally.
It's like, oh, I'm a stay-at-home mom. I'm a housewife. And I feel like we need to rebrand this whole situation and figure out like what makes us feel good and how do we answer that question in a wholehearted way that like feels good, where we're not embarrassed, where we don't feel like we're the quote uninteresting person. It's hard.
Maybe the question should be, instead of what do you do for a living, just what do you do that makes you happy each day? What brings you joy, right? Like maybe, I think you need to start that. You change the world. Instead of saying, hey, what do you do for a living? It becomes, start that. Just what do you do that makes you happy each day, right? Let's start asking that question.
I think people would have very different, feel like people would have really different answers.
Of course. And that'd be great. And that's all good.
It's just we have to like kind of reserve our own judgments because I think we all naturally tend to sort of judge what other people are doing. And if we spent half as much time just focusing on ourselves rather than whatever everyone else is doing, we'd be a lot happier.
Absolutely. Totally agree.
Going back to the Instagram thing really quickly, when you're talking about people kind of being scared of starting public platforms like that, I think in looking back on it, in all honesty, the way my Instagram looked at the beginning versus the way it looks now are very different. Mm-hmm. When I first started it, I didn't really understand it. So it was sort of like a lot of posts and stories like about my podcast. They were it was a little bit more general. It wasn't as TMI-ish. It wasn't as personal. My kids were like, can you please stop? My husband's like, why are you filming me? And I think at the beginning, it wasn't as Sarah's life as it is now. Yeah. But I think as I got more comfortable in my own, I've always been a comfortable person in my own skin in real life, but I wasn't comfortable in my own skin on Instagram. I was like, I don't want to be the crying person on Instagram. I don't want to be the person on Instagram who's selling something. Like I just had a lot of preconceived notions. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And so I think one of my biggest pieces of advice is to just kind of do what feels good for you at the time and then just let it evolve from there.
Yeah.
So, because if somebody said to me like, oh, come on Instagram and film your husband making chia seed pudding bowls or whatever, like that wouldn't have felt comfortable for me or for him.
Right.
But I think as time went on and my podcast, I really felt like my podcast needed to match my Instagram. And a lot of the content on my podcast is very like touchy-feely, tell you what's happening, like, you know, my whole family did stool sample tests today for our gut microbiomes. You know what I mean? But my Instagram was a little more generic.
Right.
And I think that as time went on, I was able to match them better.
Yeah, that's good. And
because I felt more comfortable.
Right. No, it's like, by the way, it's like practicing anything. And that's actually what I tell a lot of our students. I say, I'm like, you just, it's not going to stick around, and you can delete things and you can try things out. Nothing's going to, it's okay. Like you can just like go and do and practice and get better at it. It's like anything else, you'll get better. But if you want, and I also tell our students too, you don't have to do that. You can change careers and you can become a coach, or you can become a podcaster, or you become whatever, and you can do all different kinds of things at this time in your life and change careers and not go on social media also. I don't think that's an absolute must at all. But if you want to, and you want to add that to your platform, and you want to do that to help your business, say if you have to get comfortable, not only like you said, comfortable being on there, but you have to get comfortable practicing it, knowing that it's not going to be exactly what you want. But the more you do it, the more comfortable you are.
Doing the things that relate to you that you want to be doing. Like I will never be dancing on reels.
Yeah.
And I don't judge other people. Like I'm impressed by the people who can jump rope and dance on reels, but I cannot do that. But so for me, it's just staying in my wheelhouse of like what feels comfortable for me, whether it's like a static quote post or like the something funny my kid said or whatever, but that feels comfortable for me. But if you ask me to do the jumping jacks reel, I can't do that.
I understand. And the kid thing you just brought up, though, I'm impressed your kids at their ages, because I know they're very similar ages to my kids. My kids will not let me, they do not want to be on at all. So I don't get to share any of that. And sometimes, and for me, that actually, I wouldn't share obviously private parts of their life, but sharing even just some basic things. Like there's so many times I'm sitting there and I'm like, this would be a great, talking about recipe, this would be a great recipe to share. What we're doing right now, like my daughter and I are making something. I'm like, this is like a great little like something. And she's like, looks at me, and I know it's the look of absolutely not. There's no way. She just doesn't, they do not want it. And I have to respect that. But it's funny because my kids are obviously the biggest part of my life. And it's funny. And I share it very, very little.
I have 75% approval.
You take a risk. You are a risk taker. Because that could be tough. That could be tricky.
Yeah, no, especially, believe me, both of my kids have asked me to take plenty of things down. Yeah. They're like, bruh, that photo, bruh, that's terrible, whatever. But I think that since they've seen this podcast and platform grow from the beginning, and they were home during COVID and they were sort of a part of it, I think they've become a little bit more flexible in the range. You know what I'm saying? Like if my son sends me like a fraternity photo, blah, 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 I kind of know what's allowable and what's not. But like my son sent me a text the other day that was like, bruh, did you send me a pink weighted vest?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, fuck. Like somehow his address was in the wrong, like,
oh, by the way, that happens to me on Amazon all the time. That happens to me.
So I posted that, and it was funny and it was relatable, and he didn't care that much about that. But like if I'm posting like certain photos, he's like, ew, that's such a gross photo. Why would you post that or whatever? Right. So I sort of know it's not always perfect. I do get reprimanded at times. And my husband, like, I feel like he's just given up.
Yeah. He doesn't,
he fought it for so long.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's okay. He understands. He
He gets
understands
it.
probably a little bit
He's
more.
not dancing
It's the
on
kid.
reels, but
Right.
I call him the pantomime. He becomes immediately silent when I'm filming. And that's like sort of the humor in it. And that's why I call him Instagram husband, because he hates Instagram. But
Right.
I feel like he just knows it's like part of the drill and kind of the humor of it all.
Yeah, and that's nice. And in that way, he's just, supporting you.
But he's not like signing up for the fucking Real Housewives. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
There's like a line.
Yes.
I mean, I could be like a self-made bazillionaire if I could really go to town and post every single thing that happened in my kids' lives or my house. Like, wow.
Yeah. Well,
like,
I'm impressed. I'm just impressed with how much you get to post. I mean, that's good. That they're being supportive. They're good.
If they watch, they look at my Instagram most of the time, but we'll see. They probably ignore half of it.
Yeah, and that's okay. It's great. Listen. I love it. I'm happy. I'm a happy viewer, so I'm enjoying it. Okay.
Thank you.
So, what are some of the things? Because most people listening here obviously are also interested in their health and wellness, and I know that you wear your weighted vest, you do the dumb weights, as you like to call them. I know, you take some supplements, like you do different things to keep yourself healthy at midlife and keep yourself healthy and happy. So what are some of those things that you're doing that you feel like you're reaping the most benefits from?
I mean, do you have 5 hours?
I mean, just a little bit of it. What are like the top 3 or 5?
I think the main premise of it all, before I got into the specifics, is kind of like the good enough. What's my good enough? Mm-hmm. Because my good enough is going to be different from your good enough. Like you might be able to eat sauerkraut, but I can't eat sauerkraut. Like that makes me nauseous. Do you know what I'm saying? So you kind of have to like figure out what your good enough is and be okay with that. Because
it's all individual.
Because she's going to be always doing more. She's always going to be doing more. Like there's no way you can keep up with the Jones.
100%.
I think in the midlife, you have to become your own Jones, and that's it.
Yeah.
And
always.
Yeah. And just sort of kind of figure out what works for you. So for me, my routine, I wake up in the morning, I put a little Celtic salt on my tongue, let it dissolve there, drink a bottle of water, room temperature. Then, this is an example. I love oatmeal. Does oatmeal have glyphosates and blah, blah, blah? Yes, it does. But that's my thing. I like oatmeal because I can put 3 powders in it that I want for my body that I don't want to put in yogurt because I don't want to eat yogurt early in the morning. So I kind of take the sort of downsides of oatmeal so that I can have the upsides of these powders. By the way,
there's nothing wrong with oatmeal, especially if you're buying organic oatmeal. There's nothing wrong with oatmeal. Oatmeal got a really bad, unnecessary rap.
It did.
There can be glyphosate, all of that. If you don't buy organic, if you're having too much of it and you're not coupling it with some protein, it can raise your blood sugar too high. But it got a way bad rap for no reason. I mean, there are a lot of benefits. There are a lot of benefits. There's a lot of benefits to oatmeal.
My whole life, I sort of call this like the midlife science experiment. Like the oatmeal has 3 different powders in it. I think
what do you put in? Protein powder? Assuming.
Truvani protein powder, resveratrol powder, L-glutamine, and creatine.
Okay.
Great. Chia seeds and walnuts from the farmer's market. It's like a midlife stew.
No, so
for me, I get 17 things done all in one little cup. And it has plant milk, like 3 trees almond milk.
I love 3 trees. And I love that you're putting in creatine. I think creatine is one of those supplements that I recommend to a lot of women midlife. And they think, wait, what? That's like what my 22-year-old son is using to get buff at the gym. And I explain to them that actually it's really good for us to maintain.
It's good for muscle and cognition.
Brain. I was going to say brain health. And I am in the brain health lane. Like that's the lane that I choose to focus on above all else at midlife. Listen, there's a lot of other lanes I want to play in, but that is the number one. I want to stay sharp. And so creatine for that reason is hugely important. So I love that you have the creatine in there. That's incredible. I think that's a great little, love that, midlife stew.
I know. That's what it is.
Perfect.
Then, I've already put my testosterone on my inner thigh.
Okay.
Because when I awaken, I do that. So my
Okay.
testosterone is on my inner thigh with my pajamas on. Then I go downstairs, I make the midlife stew. Then I drink coffee and I put like one tiny little pinch of MCT oil powder. I don't like the actual oil because it makes it slimy and weird and puddly. But the powder I like, and I put collagen in that. And collagen I know is not a complete protein. It's only like a half a protein, but I'm okay with that because it's another 10 grams of pretend protein that I'm adding to the midlife morning.
It is another 10 grams of protein, and it is good for your gut health, which is really important for everyone out there. By the way, collagen does help with that lining of your gut. And as our estrogen decreases, we can have some dysbiosis, so more bad bacteria than good bacteria in our gut. So we do want to think about our microbiome health. So not only can taking a probiotic be helpful and having some of those fermented foods like sauerkraut that you love so much, but also keeping our gut lining healthy, and collagen is helpful with that as well. So it's just another bonus to collagen. Of course,
then
it's
I
also helpful
probably
for skin
take
health.
20 supplements, which we don't even have to get into right now, but they range from, the probiotic Akkermansia stuff to the mitochondria timeline. Like there's a lot in there.
Yeah.
My
And I
friends
think
got
we're
me
both, yeah.
ketamine.
Yeah. And I think, I know, I feel like we're both, we're fans of a few of the same ones. I've seen you post about some of the same things that, we'll have to do a whole
And
other
look, I'm not a doctor. My thing is I gather information,
right,
and I try to bridge the gap for myself and for listeners and followers between knowing information and doing the information.
Yeah.
So for me, I can't change the world, but I can I can put 3 things into my midlife stew.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Well, and that's why I was asking you. I'm not asking you from a doctor perspective, like what you're recommending. I'm asking you from someone who this is what you're talking about and interviewing people about on a daily basis. And so what are you, and I know that you're working hard at not only being happy and fulfilled midlife, but also being healthy midlife. So that's why I was asking you specifically to you what you're doing. Of course, again, that's not necessarily going to be perfect for everyone. Every supplement you take isn't going to be perfect for every other person, but for everyone has their own, their own journey and their own, but I was, really interested in what you're doing.
Yeah. I feel like the list goes on and on and on. Like I can't do sauna because I have melasma, so I can't heat up my core body temperature. That's why I don't do hot yoga. But my husband, for example, does the sauna like 80 times a week. And I'm just like, whoa, but I can't do that. But he's also not like taking creatine and doing all the things that I do that I keep telling him to do. He's like, yeah, I'm fine. So everyone kind of picks and chooses what their things are that they want to commit to. And you're just good with that.
I totally agree.
You'll never be able to do everything. I mean, I guess you could, but it would be really hard and you could drive yourself crazy.
Well, also, I think sometimes people too get too obsessed with all of the things that they think they're supposed to be doing, that certain things, first of all, counteract each other, right?
I know.
They sort of, they don't really work together, and it's too much, and you don't need that because you're doing that, or it's redundant. You're doing that supplement, you don't need that as well. So there's a lot of that. There's a lot of redundancy there. And also it just becomes stressful. And I always say, if you're working so hard on your health that it feels stressful, that's doing more damage. So
I have enough of my own stress that doesn't come from my little day-to-day tasks that I'm like, you know what? I got to just be chill about this.
Exactly. You do what you can do in a consistent way. And I usually say, I always ask people, hey, you added that into your diet. You added that into your, lifestyle. Can you do that 360 days a year? It doesn't have to be 365. There's always going to be a few days.
Sometimes when I go on vacation, I'm like, fuck the supplements. I can't deal with it. Yeah. It's too many things.
Well, I actually very often purposely don't take them. Sometimes if it's something that I want to take, let's say maybe for immune health or something like that, I might specifically bring that. But very often I use that as the time to take a break, to just give my body a little bit of a break.
Too many things.
It's a lot of things. And it's also just not a bad idea to give your body a little bit of a break. So, okay, this is so good. You're so inspiring.
And we didn't talk about the weights. I do the weights twice a week.
Oh, it's only twice a week. I thought you did it more, just based on hearing about the dumb weights. I feel like you do it more.
You know why? Is because I do really hard Pilates.
Okay.
And
Oh,
so I feel like the 2 days of weights and the 2 days of really hard Pilates, plus the 4 to 5 days of the vesty bestie 10-pound weighted vest on the treadmill for 45 minutes, it's like a lot for
no, that is a
me.
lot. That is a lot. I mean, and that's, it sounds like a lot, but it sounds doable. And
It's
it also sounds,
doable
right.
and it's not like high
Yeah.
intensity, but it's hard enough to like get a little bit of a sweat going
Yep.
and to feel like I've done something. But I also like that kind of recovery time because I don't like that feeling of being super sore and depleted.
I love being sore. I know, like, I love the feeling of being sore. I'm
And
like,
don't take
I'm
any
crazy.
magnesium. Don't drink any salt. Just sore yourself out.
No, but I actually I like that feeling of being sore, but not everybody likes it.
Yeah.
I love hot yoga. I love that crazy sweat. I love it. Not everybody likes that.
See,
Again,
I
you
can't
have
do
to
it,
do
but
the
yeah.
things that, yeah, but you have to do the things that work for you and that you like. No, I was not shaming you, by the way, with the 2 days of weights. The reason I said that was because I feel like from just hearing about it on Instagram, I know you do those weights. I was thinking it was more, but I think that's actually
No,
inspiring to
it's just,
people because it's more
yeah.
doable.
Yeah, it's just for me, it's what's doable is the 2 days of strength training, 2 days of really hard Pilates. And if
I
you're
love
doing
Pilates.
really hard Pilates, I'm sorry, like there's no way my husband could do the Pilates. Like he's strong and all the things. Pilates is different.
I
And if
love
you're
it.
doing it well and you're doing it with an instructor or a class that pushes you, you're really like digging into some bizarre little tiny muscles that hurt.
Yeah. And it feels so good though.
Feels so
It
good,
feels
but I
so
like to give
good.
myself that like kind of little recovery time in between.
Yeah.
So
No,
I'm
that's
not
good.
always feeling like depleted. And some of the research shows that you need that a little
No,
bit of
you
time
you
for
do
like
need
the
to recover.
muscle growth and repair. Who knows?
Absolutely. No, that's
My
great.
husband says I'm an Instagram expert, like that I get all my information from Instagram, but whatever.
You have to tell him, remember, sweetheart, I'm the nerd. I'm doing a lot of reading and research.
Well, because you tend to see, as you know, you see the same things over and over again. So they start kind of getting into your brain of like, okay, I really need to be doing the dumb weights. And like, do I take 10 or 15,000 steps a day? No. My
Right.
trainer's like, oh, so you're going to go home and walk on the treadmill now for an hour and a half? I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. I might do 30 minutes, but
Right.
I'm not walking an hour and a half after I just did the weights. I'm not working out all day long.
Well, that's the thing. It's like how much time? How much time is there? That's what
Yeah.
you get in. But with movement, I always say like that's why you do just want to get in those little bouts of movement and just being active. And people often don't count that, but you don't have to, whether you count it or you don't, it's making a difference. Taking the
Yeah.
stairs, walking, further in the parking lot or whatever it might
100%.
be, those things do make a difference. So I think just incorporating some of those behaviors into your routine and getting used to them, they do make a difference. Again, even if you're not counting them as a workout.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
Okay, last question. This has
Yeah.
been so amazing and inspiring. What is the one thing you do on a daily basis? We already got a lot of this, but what's the one thing you do on a daily basis that sort of ignites your nutritious life? That kind of gets things in motion, that one thing that you do that like sets you up for, hey, this is going to be a healthy day.
Do you mean like an actual thing?
It could be anything. It could be mental. It could be.
For me, I'm going to go back to the oatmeal
Okay.
because it's just my routine. It's like if you hand me some eggs, I'm going to tell you to fuck off. Do you
Okay.
know what I'm saying? Like I just.
If I make you an egg scramble, don't tell me to F off. You might really like my egg scrambles.
I know. But see, I would like the egg scramble at 11.
Okay.
But
Okay.
at 8 a.m., like I'm not a big intermittent faster. I find
Neither am
that's
I.
really hard.
I'm
for
not
me.
either. And I actually don't think it's great for many, not for all, but for many midlife women. I don't
mean,
think it's
like
great.
I consider a solid intermittent fast if I've made it 12 hours.
Well, by the way, you're reaping, I actually say for most people, you're reaping the benefits. I always say 12 hours is actually what we're supposed to be doing. So I don't really call it intermittent fasting, but that's something I really recommend for everyone. We need that.
It's called
time to
zip
rest.
the lip.
Well, it's called eating dinner and then not eating again until breakfast and taking
it's
time
so
and having a good night's sleep. The problem is
know.
that many of us eat and snack later at night, but that actually is just called healthy lifestyle. We don't have to label it intermittent fasting. So that actually I think is very healthy for most people. Going to 14 to 16 hours can actually cause more stress on the body. Again, not for everyone, but for many women, I don't think it works well. And I need to eat when I wake up in the morning.
Right. So that's, again, it's kind of going back to that idea of like, everyone's talking about intermittent fasting, but I'm choosing not to do that because it doesn't feel good for me. So if I can get to 12, great, 11 and a half, whatever, but I feel like starting my day with the oatmeal that I know has sort of like the carbs, the protein, the fiber, the crunchy nuts, a little bit of the fat, and plus the 3 powders, I feel like it just kind of gets a lot of things.
Yeah, you're like, I am laying a good foundation for the day.
Right. Except for the glyphosate or whatever.
Just invest in that organic oatmeal and you're good.
I have it, but it just doesn't taste as good. I have it. And I hate to say this, but some of the time I have to make it in the microwave just because it's faster and easier. But I used to every day slave over the pot on the stove. But then you have to clean the pot.
And by the way, again, that's one of those things. Much better to have that good, complete breakfast stew, midlife stew in the microwave than not to have it at all. And
I know. So that's the good enough syndrome.
Exactly.
That's what we're doing here.
I think that's great. Thank you so much. This was so great. So fun chatting with you. Finally, more about Sarah's
When you come to LA, you're going to come on my podcast.
Yes, I can't wait. I know, I can't wait. More about Sarah in the show notes, where to find her, her amazing podcast, and where to follow her on Instagram and all that good stuff. Thank you.
Thank you.